Welcome back, everyone, to the deep dive. Today, we're going to be diving into a research paper, and this one was sent in by you, our listener, and it's all about this pretty cool new AI model called ShowUI.
Yeah, ShowUI.
And ShowUI, from what I understand, it's basically like imagine an AI that can like look at your screen and actually like understand it.
Yeah.
Not just like the pictures and stuff, but like the actual interface. Like it can see the buttons and the menus, just like we can.
That's exactly it.
So that's pretty wild, right?
It is, and it's a really different approach than what we've been using with our sort of typical AI assistants that are out there right now.
Right, like Siri or Alexa.
Yeah, exactly. So you think about like Siri or Alexa, they rely on understanding the code behind the scenes,
Right.
to actually navigate a website or do something.
To know what to do.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
But ShowUI is designed to work visually like a human user would.
That's right. And the paper even mentions it being used for things like slide creation. Like, could this be an AI that designs a presentation for us?
That's the potential here.
Whoa.
Yeah. It could book a flight for you. It could fill out a form. It could potentially even code, all by understanding what it sees on the screen.
That's wild.
Yeah. There are challenges, of course.
Of course.
Current AI models, they're not that great at processing the high resolution images that would be needed to do something like that. And they also need a way to remember a sequence of actions,
Okay.
especially when those actions might be different on a phone versus a computer.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
So how do they do that?
So the paper actually dives into how ShowUI tackles these challenges with three key innovations. And the first one, they call it UI guided visual token selection.
Okay, that sounds pretty technical.
It is. But think of it this way.
Okay.
ShowUI is smart about how it processes images. Instead of analyzing every single pixel, in an image,
Yeah.
it groups visually similar patches together.
So it's not looking at the whole picture. It's looking at the pieces of the picture that matter.
Yeah, exactly. It's kind of like compressing a file, but without losing the important details.
Okay.
And that makes it much faster and much more efficient.
So it's focusing on like the key elements of the interface, like
Yeah.
the buttons and stuff, and filtering out all the noise that we as humans just kind of naturally ignore anyway.
That's a great way to put it. Yeah, absolutely. And that leads to their second innovation, which they call interleaved vision language action streaming.
Okay, what is that?
So that's how ShowUI remembers what it's seen and done. It's building up a sort of visual history, so to speak.
Mm-hmm.
So it can make decisions based on a series of steps.
So it's not just reacting to a single image, it's understanding like a flow of interaction, like how clicking this button leads to a new screen with new buttons, just like how we use apps and websites.
That's a great way to think about it. And this is especially important because, different devices have different ways of interacting.
Right.
Hitting enter on a keyboard isn't the same as tapping a go button on a phone.
Right.
But ShowUI is designed to understand these variations.
Mm-hmm. Okay, that's pretty clever. So
Yeah.
what's the third innovation?
The third one is what they call the well-selected instruction following dataset.
Okay.
So this is all about the training data that they use to teach ShowUI.
Okay.
And the researchers were very careful to choose a variety of data that covers a wide range of tasks and devices. They wanted to make sure that ShowUI could handle pretty much anything you throw at it.
Yeah, they trained it to be like a visual multitasker.
That's a great way to put it.
Like able to jump between a web browser on a laptop to an app on a phone
Yeah,
and not get confused.
and not miss a beat. And these three innovations are really what makes ShowUI unique.
Okay.
It's built on top of an existing vision language model.
Right.
But these are the key ingredients that really set it apart.
Okay, so they have this model, but they had to test it
Of course.
to see if it worked.
Right.
So how'd they do that?
So they put it through its paces.
Okay.
The paper mentions tests for things like grounding and navigation.
Mm-hmm.
These are sort of standard ways to evaluate this kind of AI.
Okay.
So grounding is about testing if ShowUI can find specific elements on the screen based on a text instruction.
Okay.
So like if you say, click the sign in button,
Right.
can it actually locate that button within a complex interface?
Okay.
And then navigation is about those multi-step tasks,
Right.
like booking a flight or filling out a form.
Okay.
And they wanted to see, if ShowUI could understand the flow of a task from start to finish.
Right.
Handling all the different steps and interactions involved. And they used a number of different data sets for these tests.
Okay.
They used one called ScreenSpot for grounding,
Okay.
Mind2Web for website navigation, AITW for mobile navigation, and mini-WAB for online navigation.
Whoa, that's a lot.
Yeah.
Okay, well, enough about the tests. Did it pass?
Well, the results are actually pretty impressive, and this is where I think it will get really interesting for you.
Okay.
ShowUI actually outperformed many existing models in both accuracy and efficiency. And, even though it's relatively small and wasn't trained on a massive amount of data.
So it's lean, mean, and understands our screens.
That's a great way to put it.
But I'm guessing there's a but coming.
You're right. Research papers rarely paint a perfect picture.
Right.
There are some limitations to consider, and this gets to some really important ideas about the future of AI.
Okay.
So the biggest caveat is that ShowUI relies on what we call offline data.
Okay. Break that down for me. What's offline data?
Offline data means that the data that was used to train ShowUI was collected beforehand, not in real time.
Okay.
So ShowUI learned from a fixed set of examples, sort of a snapshot of how websites and apps looked at a particular point in time.
Okay.
But, the digital world is constantly changing.
That's true.
Websites get redesigned, apps get updated, new interfaces pop up all the time.
So ShowUI might struggle to keep up with all those changes.
That's the potential issue.
Yeah.
It might be great at understanding the examples it was trained on, but it could get confused or make mistakes if it encounters something significantly different.
Right.
It's like studying for a test based on last year's material and then, being surprised when the questions are all new.
That's a great analogy.
Yeah.
So what's the solution? How do we teach an AI to keep learning and adapting to the ever-changing digital world?
That's where things get really interesting.
Okay.
The researchers proposed using something called reinforcement learning to train ShowUI in more dynamic online environments.
Reinforcement learning, isn't that how they train those game-playing AIs that can beat human champions at chess and Go and stuff?
That's exactly right.
Whoa.
It's a really powerful technique that allows AI systems to learn through trial and error. So they get feedback on their actions and they adjust their strategies accordingly.
So instead of just memorizing examples, ShowUI could learn from its mistakes.
Yeah.
And adapt to new situations as they arise.
That's right.
It's like giving it the ability to constantly update its knowledge base, almost like how we humans learn from experience.
That's a great way to put it. And that's one of the key takeaways from this research. It's not just about building AI that can understand what it sees, but it's about building AI that can learn and evolve, just like we do.
That's powerful.
Yeah.
Wow. Okay.
So
I'm already intrigued.
Yeah. And that idea of AI learning and evolving ties directly back into how ShowUI was actually designed. We were talking about how it simplifies images
Right.
to make processing faster.
Like by grouping those visually similar patches together, right?
Exactly, like decluttering the screen, so to speak.
Yeah.
Well, the paper explains that in more detail.
Okay.
ShowUI actually builds what they call a UI-connected graph.
Okay.
So it analyzes the image and figures out which areas are redundant,
Okay.
like empty spaces
Right.
or uniform backgrounds that don't really matter.
So it's not just shrinking the image, it's intelligently deciding which parts to just ignore.
That's exactly right. It's focusing on those key elements.
Okay.
And it actually uses what's called the RGB color space to do that.
RGB color space.
Yeah, so, like the red, green, and blue values of each patch.
Okay.
And if neighboring patches are really similar, it just groups them together.
Gotcha. So if there's a big block of the same color, it just treats that as one thing instead of analyzing every single pixel within that block.
That's the idea. And that makes the whole system much, much faster.
Okay, that makes sense.
Yeah. And what's really neat is that this process actually adapts to the complexity of the image.
Okay.
A simple image with lots of blank space will have a very small graph, but a busy screen with lots of elements will have a much more complex graph.
Oh.
It's like ShowUI is adjusting its strategy based on what it's seeing.
So it's not a one-size-fits-all approach. It's tailoring its analysis to each individual screen.
That's exactly right. Now, the paper does compare this method to another technique called token merging.
Okay.
Which also tries to simplify images, but it ends up losing some important information about the position of elements on the screen.
Why is the position information so important?
Well, think about those grounding tests where ShowUI have to, find a specific button based on a text instruction.
Right.
If you lose that positional information, it's like giving someone directions, but you forget to tell them which street to turn on.
Oh, okay.
They might end up in the right neighborhood,
Right.
but they won't be able to find the exact house.
Right.
So ShowUI's approach is much more precise.
Okay.
It keeps track of where things are on the screen, even as it's simplifying the overall image.
So it's a delicate balance between efficiency and accuracy.
Absolutely.
And ShowUI seems to have found that sweet spot.
It seems so.
Okay, that makes sense. So we've talked about the visual processing, but what about the action part of this?
Right.
This vision language action model. Like, how does ShowUI actually learn to interact with different devices?
That's where things get really interesting. And this is where the researchers really had to get creative.
Huh. Hmm.
They realized that actions are different from language.
Uh-huh.
You can't just give an AI a dictionary of words and expect it to understand how to use them in a sentence.
Right.
Actions have their own kind of grammar,
Okay.
their own rules about how they can be combined and sequenced.
So how do you teach an AI the grammar of actions?
They actually used a clever approach.
Okay.
They structured each action as what's called a JSON format.
JSON format.
Yeah, it's a way of organizing data that's commonly used in programming.
Okay, so they're using a programming concept to teach an AI about human actions.
That's exactly right.
Okay, that's interesting.
It might seem counterintuitive, but it actually makes a lot of sense.
Okay.
When you think about it, JSON is all about structuring information in a clear and consistent way.
Right.
And that's perfect for representing actions.
Right.
Which also need to be structured in a clear and consistent way.
Yeah, that makes sense. Okay, so how does this JSON format actually work for actions?
So each action has a specific type, like click or type,
Right.
along with any necessary parameters.
Okay.
So for a CL18 action, the parameter would be the coordinates of where to click on the screen.
Right.
And for a type action, the parameter would be the text to type.
Okay.
And this allows ShowUI to understand actions from different devices in a unified way.
So it's like they created a universal language
Yes.
for human-computer interaction.
That's a great way to put it.
Like a way for ShowUI to understand actions regardless of the specific device or interface.
Exactly. And they didn't stop there.
Okay.
They realized that ShowUI needs more than just a list of actions.
Yep.
It needs to understand how those actions are used in context,
Okay.
how they relate to each other.
So like how clicking a button might lead to the new screen and then you have to perform a different action on that new screen.
Exactly. It's about understanding that flow of interaction,
Yeah.
the sequence of actions that make up a task.
Right.
And to help ShowUI with this, they actually provided it with a readme file.
A readme? Like the files that programmers include with their code to explain how things work.
That's exactly right.
Okay, that's interesting.
It's like giving ShowUI an instruction manual for the digital world,
Okay.
Explaining the purpose of each action and how it should be used.
Gotcha. So it's not just about learning the actions, it's about learning the rules of the game,
Yeah.
the strategies for interacting effectively.
That's a great way to think about it.
So they're teaching it like the art of human-computer interaction,
Precise.
not just the mechanics.
Right. And this approach is really important because it encourages ShowUI to think about the meaning of its actions.
Yeah.
Not just blindly following a list of commands.
It's like the difference between memorizing a phrase book and actually understanding a language.
That's a great analogy.
Yeah.
And that deeper understanding is what we need if we want AI to become truly helpful and reliable partners in our digital lives.
Right.
We need AI that can reason and adapt and make decisions that align with our intentions.
I like that. Well, they've certainly put a lot of thought into the design of this AI.
Yeah.
It's fascinating to see how they're tackling these challenges of visual understanding and action.
Yeah.
But we can't forget about the data itself,
That's right.
the examples that ShowUI learns from.
The training data is crucial.
Yeah.
And the researchers were very deliberate in their choices.
Okay.
They didn't just use any old data they could find.
Right.
They carefully selected data sets that would give ShowUI a well-rounded education
Okay.
in the art of visual interaction.
So what kind of data sets did they use?
Well, they used a combination of data sets,
Okay.
each with its own strengths and weaknesses.
Uh-huh.
For example, they used a data set called Screen Spot for grounding,
Okay.
which contains examples from a variety of devices and interface styles, web browsers, mobile apps, even desktop applications.
So it's like making sure a student gets exposure to different subjects, like math, science, history, instead of just focusing on one area.
That's a great analogy.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that diverse training is really important because
Yep.
it helps ShowUI to generalize its knowledge,
Oh.
to apply what it's learned to new and unseen situations.
Right.
It's not just about memorizing specific examples. It's about understanding the underlying principles of user interface design,
Okay.
the patterns and conventions that make interfaces work.
That makes sense. So they've got the processing, the actions, and the training data. It sounds like they really thought of everything.
They really have.
But the real test is how well it works in practice, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
All this clever design and this careful data selection wouldn't mean much if ShowUI couldn't actually perform in the real world.
Right.
That's why they put it through such a rigorous evaluation process,
Okay.
using a battery of tests to see how it stacked up against other AI models.
Okay, let's hear about those tests. What were the main categories and how did ShowUI do?
Well, they focused on two main categories, grounding and navigation. Remember, grounding is about locating those specific elements on the screen based on text instructions.
Mm-hmm.
And they primarily used the ScreenSpot dataset for these tests, which, as we mentioned, is a really diverse dataset covering lots of different devices and interface styles.
Okay.
Yeah.
And how did ShowUI perform on these grounding tests? Was it able to find the right buttons and elements?
It did exceptionally well.
Wow.
In fact, it achieved state-of-the-art results on the ScreenSpot benchmark,
Wow.
which means it outperformed many other models, including some that are much larger and more complex.
Okay.
And remember, ShowUI is relatively small and wasn't trained on this enormous amount of data, so it's efficient and accurate,
Right.
which is a winning combination.
Yeah, that's impressive.
Yeah.
So it can find things on the screen, but can it actually use them? How did it do on the navigation test, those multi-step tasks?
So for navigation, they used a variety of data sets, including Mind2Web for website navigation, AITW for mobile navigation, and MiniWab for online navigation. And these data sets are designed to test different aspects of ShowUI's abilities,
Okay.
like understanding different interface types, handling unexpected events, and completing tasks that require a sequence of actions.
And those tests really put ShowUI's understanding of the action grammar to the test, right?
Exactly, yeah.
Like it had to know which actions to use in what order and how to adapt to different situations.
That's right. And in these tests, ShowUI again showed its strength, consistently outperforming many other models.
Okay.
It successfully booked flights, filled out forms, interacted with elements in a simulated online environment. It really demonstrated this robust ability to navigate complex interfaces and complete tasks.
So it's not just understanding what it sees, it's taking meaningful actions based on that understanding.
Right.
It's starting to look like a truly capable visual agent.
I would say so.
That's impressive.
Yeah, and this is where things get really interesting, especially for someone like you who's always thinking about the bigger picture.
Right.
Because as impressive as these results are, the researchers were also very transparent about the limitations of ShowUI.
Okay.
They identified areas where it still needs improvement.
Mm-hmm.
And those areas actually point to some really fundamental challenges in AI research.
Okay, I'm intrigued. Give me the caveats. What are the things that keep AI researchers up at night?
Well, one of the main limitations that they highlighted is ShowUI's reliance on offline data.
Right.
We talked about this earlier,
Uh-huh.
but it's worth emphasizing because it has significant implications for the future of this technology.
Okay, remind me again what offline data means in this context.
Okay, so offline data means that ShowUI was trained on a fixed set of examples, a snapshot of the digital world as it existed at a particular point in time.
Right.
But as we know, the digital world is constantly changing.
That's true.
Websites get redesigned, apps get updated, new interfaces emerge all the time.
So ShowUI might struggle to adapt to those unexpected changes.
That's the potential issue,
It might be great at understanding the interfaces it was trained on,
Right.
but it could get confused or make mistakes when it encounters something new and different.
Exactly.
It's like studying for a test using last year's textbook and then finding out that the curriculum has changed.
That's a perfect analogy.
Yeah.
Yeah, and the researchers acknowledge this as a key area for future research.
Okay.
They suggest exploring techniques like reinforcement learning
Okay.
to train ShowUI in more dynamic online environments where it can learn from its mistakes and adapt to new situations as they arise.
Reinforcement learning, isn't that how they train those game-playing AIs that can beat human champions?
It is. It's a very powerful technique that allows these AI systems to learn through trial and error.
Right.
They get feedback on their actions,
Yeah.
and they adjust their strategies accordingly. It's like giving ShowUI the ability to constantly update its knowledge base based on the latest information,
Right.
almost like how we humans learn from experience.
That's a great way to put it. And that's one of the key takeaways from this research. It's not just about building AI that can understand what it sees, but it's about building AI that can learn and evolve just like we do.
Exactly.
But before we get too far ahead of ourselves, let's get back to those tests you mentioned that they used a variety of data sets to evaluate ShowUI.
That's right. And each data set focuses on different aspects of visual understanding and interaction. For example, for those grounding tasks, where ShowUI has to find specific elements on the screen based on a text instruction. They primarily use a dataset called ScreenSpot.
Okay, I remember ScreenSpot. It's a good one because it covers a diverse range of devices and interface styles, right?
Exactly. They wanted to make sure ShowUI could handle pretty much any interface you throw at it, whether it's a website, of a mobile app, or even a desktop application.
So it's not just about testing if ShowUI can understand a particular type of interface. It's about testing its ability to generalize its knowledge, to apply what it's learned to new and unseen situations.
Precisely. And on this benchmark, ShowUI achieved some really impressive results.
Yeah.
Significantly outperforming many other models. It consistently demonstrated this deep understanding of the visual structure of interfaces.
Okay.
Correctly identifying elements based on text instructions. Even in complex and cluttered environments.
Sounds like ShowUI is a natural when it comes to understanding what it sees.
I would say so, but they didn't stop at ScreenSpot.
Okay.
They also wanted to see how ShowUI performed on navigation tasks.
Oh, okay.
Those multi-step challenges that require understanding the flow of interaction? The sequence of actions needed to complete a task.
Right. And they use different data sets for these navigation tasks, right? You mentioned Mind2Web for websites, AITW for mobile apps, and MiniWob for online environments.
That's right. Each of these data sets presents unique challenges.
Okay.
Testing different aspects of ShowUI's abilities. So Mind2Web focuses on the intricacies of navigating websites with tasks like browsing different pages.
Okay.
Finding specific information, filling out forms. It's about testing. If ShowUI can understand the structure of a website and follow the user's instructions to find what they're looking for.
It's like testing if ShowUI can be your personal web browser.
Exactly.
Like understanding your commands and navigating that vast sea of information on the internet.
Yeah, and on this benchmark, ShowUI again performed incredibly well.
Wow.
Achieving state-of-the-art results on a number of tasks.
Okay.
It demonstrated a very robust ability to understand the flow of interaction on websites, correctly interpreting instructions, and completing tasks with a high degree of accuracy.
So it's not just about understanding what it sees, it's about using that understanding to navigate and interact effectively.
That's right.
It's like having a digital assistant that can understand your intentions and help you get things done online.
Exactly. And it's not just limited to websites.
Okay.
They also tested ShowUI on AITW, which focuses on mobile app navigation.
Right. And mobile apps are a bit different from websites, aren't they?
No.
They often have different interface designs, different interaction patterns, and different challenges.
Exactly. Mobile apps rely more on those touch-based gestures.
Right.
Like tapping and swiping and pinching.
Right.
And they often have to deal with things like notifications and system-level events and interruptions.
Right.
That could disrupt the flow of a task.
So AITW is a really good test of ShowUI's ability to handle the dynamic and often unpredictable nature of mobile apps.
That's right. And on this benchmark, ShowUI again showed its strength.
Okay.
Demonstrating a strong ability to navigate through mobile apps, understand the different interaction patterns, and handle those unexpected events.
So it's not just a web browsing whiz, it's a mobile app master as well.
Yeah.
It's starting to sound like this AI can handle pretty much anything you throw at it.
It's certainly shaping up to be a very versatile visual agent.
That's very cool.
Yeah, but they didn't stop there.
Okay.
To really push the boundaries of what ShowUI could do. They also tested it on MiniWob, which is a data set specifically designed to evaluate a model's ability to interact with simulated online environments.
So it's not just about those static websites or apps.
Right.
It's about handling the dynamic nature of the internet with its ever-changing content and unexpected events.
Exactly. And this is where things get even more interesting because MiniWob includes tasks that require a deeper level of understanding of the underlying web technologies.
Okay.
Things like HTML and JavaScript.
So it's not just about recognizing visual elements and patterns. It's about understanding the code that makes those elements and patterns work.
That's right. And on these more complex tasks, ShowUI showed promise.
Okay.
But also highlighted some areas where further research is needed.
Okay.
It struggled with some tasks that required a deeper understanding of the code behind the scenes.
Okay.
Suggesting that there's still work to be done.
Right.
In bridging the gap between visual understanding and the underlying technologies that power the internet.
It's like trying to learn a foreign language by only listening to people speak. You might pick up some vocabulary and phrases.
Right.
but you'll struggle to understand the nuances of grammar and syntax.
That's a great analogy.
Yeah.
And it highlights the need for AI systems that can not only process visual information, but also understand the code and the data structures that govern our digital world.
So we're talking about a future where AI can not only interact with our interfaces,
Right.
but potentially even design and build them.
Potentially, yeah.
Wow.
Becoming true partners and shaping the digital landscape.
That's a very powerful thought.
It is.
Wow. Okay, well, you've certainly given us a lot to think about. ShowUI is clearly a remarkable achievement, but it's also a reminder that the journey of AI development is far from over.
We do.
There are still challenges to overcome,
Absolutely.
limitations to address, and important considerations to navigate as we venture further into this uncharted territory.
I completely agree. And one of those important considerations is the potential impact of AI on the job market.
Yeah.
As AI systems become more capable, there's a natural concern that they might displace human workers.
It's a valid concern.
It is.
If an AI can understand our screens and perform tasks like booking flights, filling out forms, even coding,
Right.
what does that mean for people whose jobs involve those tasks?
That's a question that deserves very careful consideration.
It does.
And it's not a simple one to answer.
Right.
There's no doubt that AI will have an impact on the job market, just like any other technological advancement throughout history.
Right.
The question is, what kind of impact will it have?
Right.
And how can we prepare for it?
It's not necessarily about AI stealing jobs from humans.
Right.
It's more about how we adapt to a changing landscape, how we evolve our skills and our roles to complement AI's capabilities.
Exactly. And this is where I think things get really interesting, because the emergence of AI actually presents an opportunity
Okay.
to rethink the way we work, the way we learn,
Right.
and the way we value human contributions.
Okay, expand on that. Give me the optimistic view of how AI could transform the job market.
Well, imagine a world where AI handles all of those repetitive, mundane tasks
Right.
that currently consume so much of our time and energy. Tasks like data entry,
Right.
scheduling appointments,
Yeah.
even some aspects of coding. These could be automated,
Okay.
freeing up human workers to focus on more creative,
Right.
strategic,
Yeah.
and fulfilling work.
So it's not about replacement, it's about augmentation.
That's right.
AI becomes a tool that enhances our capabilities,
Right.
allowing us to achieve more,
Yeah.
learn faster, and focus on what truly matters.
Exactly. And this shift could lead to the creation of new jobs, new industries, new ways of working that we can't even imagine yet.
Right, like the internet revolutionized the way we communicate and access information.
Exactly.
AI has the potential to revolutionize the way we work, learn, and create value.
I agree.
It's exciting.
It is.
It's about embracing the possibilities.
Yeah.
Not fearing the unknown.
Right.
But let's be realistic, this transition won't be easy for everyone.
Of course not.
Some people will inevitably be displaced from their jobs.
Right.
And we need to be prepared to support them, to help them adapt and acquire the skills they need to thrive in this new landscape.
Absolutely. And this is where education and training play a crucial role.
Yeah.
We need to invest in programs that help people develop the skills that will be in demand in this AI-driven world.
Right.
Skills like critical thinking, problem-solving, creativity, emotional intelligence.
Those are the skills that are uniquely human.
They are.
The skills that AI can't replicate.
Exactly. And those are the skills that will be most valuable in the future, regardless of what specific jobs or industries emerge.
That's a really important conversation.
It is.
It's about recognizing the potential impact of AI on the job market, both the challenges and the opportunities.
Yes.
And it's about taking proactive steps to ensure that everyone has the chance to thrive in this new world.
I completely agree. And it's a conversation that needs to happen now, not later.
Right.
We need to be thinking about these issues, developing solutions, and preparing ourselves for a future where AI plays an increasingly significant role in our lives.
Well, you've certainly given us a lot to think about. ShowUI is a remarkable achievement pushing the boundaries of what AI can do, but it's also a reminder that we're still in the early stages of this journey.
We are.
And there are many questions yet to be answered.
Absolutely.
Many challenges yet to be addressed.
And that's what makes this field so fascinating.
Yeah,
It's a constant exploration,
it is.
a constant push to understand the limits of what's possible,
Right.
and a constant reminder that we have a responsibility to shape the future of this technology in a way that benefits humanity as a whole.
Well said. And on that note, we'll wrap up this part of our deep dive into the world of ShowUI, but we're not done yet. there's still much more to explore,
There is.
including a closer look at the specific benchmarks and datasets they use to evaluate ShowUI.
That's right. We'll dive into the nitty-gritty details of how they measured ShowUI's performance,
Okay.
what we can learn from those results, and what it all means for the future of AI.
Stay tuned. Welcome back to the deep dive. For those of you just tuning in, we're exploring this research paper about a new AI model called ShowUI.
Yeah, ShowUI. It's pretty fascinating stuff.
It is. So
Yeah.
if you haven't listened to the first two parts, it's basically an AI that can understand and interact with user interfaces.
Right, like having a digital assistant
Yeah.
that can actually see your screen and use apps and websites just like you do.
Exactly. And we've been talking about how the researchers behind ShowUI, they really wanted to put it through its paces
Oh, yeah.
and evaluate its performance.
They did a very rigorous job.
They wanted to make sure that it could handle a wide range of tasks and interfaces, so they used a whole bunch of different benchmark data sets to really test it.
Yeah, a whole battery of tests.
Exactly. And those tests showed that ShowUI can do some really impressive things.
It really can.
Like it can book flights and fill out forms.
Right, it was consistently outperforming other AI models in these tests.
Yeah.
Demonstrating this really strong ability to understand and interact with user interfaces,
Yeah.
basically just like a human would.
Yeah. It's amazing how far AI has come.
It is.
I'm also curious about the limitations, because every technology has its boundaries.
Of course.
And understanding those boundaries is super important for knowing where we can push things further.
Absolutely. And the researchers behind ShowUI, they were very upfront about the limitations they encountered.
Right.
And one of the key areas they highlighted was ShowUI's reliance on what we call offline data.
Right. And we talked about this earlier.
We did.
But just to remind everyone, that means that ShowUI was trained on a fixed set of examples, a snapshot of the digital world as it existed at a certain point in time.
Right, like a time capsule almost.
Yeah.
Interfaces.
Exactly. And it makes sense because technology changes so quickly.
It does.
Websites get redesigned, apps get updated, new interfaces emerge all the time. It must be really difficult to train an AI to keep up with all of that.
It's a huge challenge.
It is, and the researchers acknowledge that ShowUI might struggle to adapt to those unexpected changes.
Yeah.
It might be great at understanding the interfaces that it was trained on,
Right.
but it could get confused or make mistakes when it encounters something new and different.
Yeah, it's like trying to navigate a city using a map that's 5 years old.
Well, that's a good one.
You might still be able to find some landmarks, but you're bound to run into some roadblocks and detours along the way.
That's a great analogy, and that's why they emphasize the need for future research to focus on training ShowUI in those more dynamic online environments,
Right.
where it can learn from its mistakes and adapt to those new situations in real time.
Exactly. It's like giving ShowUI the ability to constantly download the latest maps and traffic updates, so it can always navigate effectively, even in unfamiliar territory.
I like that. That's a really cool idea. It really highlights how AI is evolving beyond those static rule-based systems of the past.
Yeah.
We're moving towards AI that can learn and adapt and even surprise us with its capabilities.
And that's what makes it so exciting.
It does. But let's get back to those tests for a minute.
Yeah.
You mentioned that they used a variety of these benchmark data sets to evaluate ShowUI.
Right.
So can you tell me more about those data sets? What were they looking at?
Sure. Each data set was chosen to test different aspects of ShowUI's abilities.
Yeah.
From understanding those basic visual elements to navigating those more complex interfaces and even completing multi-step tasks.
Yeah.
And one of the data sets they used was called ScreenSpot.
Right, ScreenSpot, we talked about that one earlier, and if I remember correctly, it's designed to test a model's ability to understand and interact with a really wide range of user interfaces, right?
Exactly. ScreenSpot includes examples from all kinds of different devices, desktops, laptops, tablets, smartphones.
Yeah.
And it covers a really broad range of interface styles, including web browsers, mobile apps, and even operating system interfaces.
So it's not just about testing if ShowUI can understand, a particular type of app or website. It's about testing if it can generalize that knowledge and apply what it's learned to basically any interface that it encounters.
Precisely. And ShowUI did remarkably well on ScreenSpot.
It did.
Yeah, consistently identifying and interacting with elements across all these different devices and interface styles. It even outperformed other AI models that were much larger and more computationally expensive.
That's really impressive. It suggests that ShowUI has learned something really fundamental about the way that user interfaces are designed regardless of those specific details.
That's what it seems like. And this is where things get really exciting, because if an AI can understand those underlying principles of user interface design It could potentially not only use existing interfaces, but also help us to design better interfaces in the future.
Right. AI that could help us make our technology more intuitive and efficient and user-friendly.
Exactly.
Yeah.
That's just one of the many potential applications of this kind of technology. As AI continues to advance, we're going to see it playing a more and more important role in how we design, build, and interact with the digital world around us.
That's so cool. It's an exciting time to be following the developments in AI for sure. But I'm curious, did the researchers identify any areas where ShowUI struggled? Even the most impressive technology has its limitations.
Right.
And understanding those limitations can help us guide future research and development.
Absolutely. That's a great point. And they did highlight a few areas where ShowUI needs further improvement.
Okay, let's hear it.
One interesting observation was that ShowUI seemed to have more difficulty handling interfaces that had a lot of text.
Text, like paragraphs of written content.
Yeah, or even just large blocks of text within a user interface. It seems that while ShowUI is excellent at processing that visual information, the images, the icons, the buttons,
Right.
it still has some room for improvement when it comes to understanding and interpreting text within the context of a user interface.
That makes sense. Text is inherently more abstract than those visual elements. You have to understand the meaning of the words, the context in which they're used, and how they relate to the overall function of that interface.
Right, and that requires a much deeper level of language understanding that goes beyond simply recognizing the visual appearance of text.
Right.
It's a challenge that AI researchers are actively working on. And it's an area where we can expect to see some very significant progress in the next few years.
So ShowUI is really good at understanding the visual aspects of an interface, but it still needs a little bit of work on the textual comprehension side of things.
That's one way to put it.
That's fair enough.
But overall, the results of these tests were extremely promising. ShowUI consistently demonstrated this remarkable ability to understand and interact with user interfaces, surpassing many other models in both accuracy and efficiency.
Yeah, and it's exciting to think about the potential applications of this technology as AI continues to evolve. We're likely to see it playing an even bigger role in our digital lives, helping us to navigate the complexities of the digital world, automate those tedious tasks, and even create those new and innovative interfaces that enhance our human capabilities.
It's really pushing the boundaries of what's possible.
It is, and we are here for it.
Absolutely. And this research is just the beginning. As we continue to explore the possibilities of AI, we're bound to discover new ways to use this technology to benefit humanity, to make our lives easier, more efficient, and more fulfilling.
Couldn't have said it better myself. So that wraps up our deep dive into the world of ShowUI.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Of course, it was a pleasure as always, and thanks to you, our listener, for sending in this fascinating research paper. And until next time, keep exploring, keep learning, and keep diving deep into the fascinating world of knowledge.